Hey everyone, Zandom here again with another D&D 5th edition basics. Today I will be going over the wizard. Now the wizard is a more advanced class. I wouldn't really recommend it that much if you're a newer player, seeing as though it has some more complex things going on with it than fighters, barbarians, and a couple other classes that are a bit simpler. Wizards are also one of the most fragile classes, if not the most fragile class. So they really can't take very many hits. So let's get into what the wizard is, what they do really, etc., etc. Now, the wizard is a spellcaster, quite obviously. They really can be focused in a variety of things. They are different from most of the other classes, seeing as though they require an actual spell book to cast their spells, and thusly they can't learn spells by leveling up. You have to go and research it at like a library or from a spell book that you took it from like an enemy mage or something like that. That's really the only way you can gain new spells as a wizard. So you can sometimes be a bit more limited as the wizard when it comes to learning certain types of spells, but you can have a massive repertoire of spells just lined up that you can swap out after each long rest, so that can be quite good too. So let's get right into it. Recommended races for a wizard would be Gnome, because they get a very high intelligence bonus. Elf, High Elf specifically, because they get an intelligence bonus. Humans are good, Tieflings are good, and those are the four main races that you're going to want to be if you're going to want to min-max a bit. If you want, you can play some other races, but you're going to have a bit smaller of a starting intelligence score. So let's just start off with a gnomish wizard. And we'll be making a first level wizard, of course, because that's what I do with these videos. Now, as a gnome, you have a movement speed of 25 feet. Not the best thing in the world. You can only move 5 spaces with this. So you're going to be less mobile and less able to run away as a gnome. But gnomes also have a +2 in intelligence. And I will actually be playing a forest gnome. And they get a +1 to the dexterity as well. And that's pretty good. As a wizard, you're going to want to have a fairly high dexterity in addition to intelligence, so you can avoid attacks if you're actually attacked. Let's determine the stats now. I'll be using standard stat array, like normal. 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. I will, of course, be putting the 15 in intelligence, which becomes a 17 because of the gnome bonus. I will be putting the 14 into dexterity, which will become 15 because of the gnomish bonus. I'll put 13 into, say, wisdom. I'll put my 12 into constitution, 10 into charisma, to strength. As a wizard, strength is not the most important thing in the world. You're not really going to be running up and smacking people across the face with, like, any sort of weapons. You'll have maybe a dagger or a short sword or something, or maybe a quarterstaff, and you'll just be hanging out in the back. You'll maybe have to stab someone if they get close enough to you, but more often than not, your spells will do more damage than anything your melee can do. So, let's see here, and determine the stat bonuses. You get a +3 for 17. You get a +2 for 15. A +1 for 12. A +1 for 13. A -1 for strength. And you don't get it either way for charisma as a 10. So these stats really work pretty well for the wizard. If you want, you can shift some things around If you want, you could have higher strength and swap it out for wisdom. Alternatively, you don't need that much constitution, though it's nice to have it because it really helps you out when it comes to like giving you more hit points and stuff, because wizards have a very low starting hit point count. Let's move on to the racial features of the gnomes. Alright. So as a gnome, you have dark vision. A number of races have this. It pretty much means you can see up to 50 feet in dim light as if it were bright light, and 60 feet in darkness as if it were dim light. Now, not all DMs really like applying dark vision, so sometimes they'll say, yeah, we're not going with dark vision, but it's kind of helpful. It helps you pretty much notice things in darkness. Elves also have it. Elves, dwarves, I think tieflings, variety of other races. It's always nice to have that. Gnomes also have gnome cunning, which is have advantage on all int, viz, and charisma saving throws against magic. Now, this is actually quite an incredible skill. This pretty much means you're always going to have advantage on any mental magic that's being used against you. This won't really help you against a fireball or something, or attack-based spells, because those are dexterity-based for dodging. But this is really nice because that means you're going to have a really hard time getting charmed, being put to sleep, etc., etc. Alright, on to the next ones. Forest gnomes have natural illusionist. This means that you know minor illusion. Now, because of this, you could be any class and pick Forest Gnome and no minor illusion. This can be a pretty fun spell. It's not the most useful thing in the world, because you can only really make like a small object, and it really can't make noises unless you want to just make noises. But it can be useful at some points. Say if you want to distract someone, you could like create an illusionary gold coin on the ground, something like that. So they bend over and then you can just go at him when he's distracted. I don't know, that's just an example of what you can use minor illusion for. The final racial trait is speak with small beasts. This is pretty much you can communicate simple ideas to small or smaller beasts. This pretty much means that, I don't know, you could determine from a small creature like a chipmunk or a squirrel if something's dangerous nearby. Of course, this wouldn't work against a bear or a wolf or anything like that. Mostly just small creatures. That's that pretty much, and let's move on to the actual wizard traits. So, as a wizard, oh yeah, also known languages, common and gnomish. Okay. Starting hit points as a wizard are 6 plus your constitution modifier. So that means you have 7 hit points. Now, you compare this to literally any other class, this is absolutely horrendous when it comes to hit point values. Wizards more than make up with it by how powerful they are, but these guys cannot take hits. Like, if you get a single strike from an enemy at first level, there's a chance you're gonna go unconscious, which is never good if they roll really high. So pretty much, this means wizards are pretty much going to be relegated to the back. There are some spells that make you a lot more durable, like mage armor, but generally you're not going to want to take hits. Let's see here. Weapon proficiencies. As a wizard, you're not very proficient with much. Let's see here. You have no armor proficiencies, so that means you can wear no armors, not even light armors, unless you want to have penalties against movement and dexterity. You have proficiency in daggers, darts, slings, quarter staves, and light crossbows. So this means your only melee weapon that you can use really are daggers and quarterstaves. Quarterstaves are strength-based. That means that you're not really going to do very much with them. As a matter of fact, you get a -1 when you're attacking with it. So if you're forced to fight, I would recommend using a dagger if you're going to have dexterity as a high stat for you. Alright, next is the saving throws. You are proficient in intelligence and wisdom saving throws, so that means you get a +2 to those. That means you get a +5 to wisdom saving throws, and a +3 for wisdom. Let's see here. Wizard hit dies are a d6. Now, d6 are not that great. This means at a short rest you can recover hit points by rolling a hit die. As a wizard at first level, you will have 1 hit die. This means that you can recover anywhere from 1 to 6 hit points at a short rest. This means you're not going to be able to recover very much during your short rests. Like I said before, as a wizard, you're really not going to want to do all that much. Right. Let's move on to spell casting. Now, as a wizard, you of course can cast spells. And of course, it is of the arcane variety. So, yeah, if you're thinking that you want to use like divine magics, that's a cleric. Wizards are pretty much just there for explosion magic, fire magic, frost magic, things like that. Wizards also have a variety of enchantment magics, like things that enhance your abilities. I believe they can also have a spell that allows you to grow people or shrink them. Things like that. Wizards have no healing spells. Of course. Wizards also have arcane recovery. Now this means during a short rest you can cover expended spell slots equal to your wizard level. I'll explain the spell slot system now. Let's see here. So, as a first level wizard, you will have 2 first level spell slots. And this means that at the beginning of the day, or after you take a long rest, you will have 2 spells that you can cast, right? Now, these 2 spells can be any spells that you have here that are prepared. Once you use one of these spell slots, you lose it, and once you use all of them, you can only use your Cantrip magic, which are magics that you can use whenever you want. If you've played 4th edition, it is pretty much at-will abilities. That's what cantrips are. But pretty much wizards, at first level, you're not going to be able to cast very many spells in a day. If you use Arcane Recovery, you'll be able to reduce this down to 1, reduce this number that you've expended by 1. So this means you effectively have 3 spells that you can cast per day. And let's get into the actual spells. Now, as a Forest Gnome, you already know Minor Illusion as a cantrip. Now, because this is a cantrip, you can use it anytime you want. Now, as a wizard, you know 3 cantrips at first level, and you know pretty much, let's see here, yeah, you know 3 cantrips. Let's see here, I would recommend, as a starting wizard, probably to have Firebolt. Firebolt is very straightforward. You shoot a bolt of fire, it deals 1d10 fire damage if you hit the enemy, of course. This is pretty much just a very basic cantrip that just deals damage, has very good range, I believe 120 feet. You can look that up at the spell list near the back of your player's handbook. Some other spells that might be good for the wizard as cantrips. Since I have 2 more, I would recommend maybe getting Mage Hand. This means that you effectively can grasp things and just carry things that weigh up to about 10 pounds from like 30 feet away. You can use this to remotely trigger traps. You could use it to pull a lever from a distance, drop like a bridge or something. It's pretty useful. It's just a utility spell. It's pretty nice to have every once in a while, though its usefulness really depends on what your surroundings are. So if the DM isn't using anything like that, then it would be kind of worthless. Another fun usage of Mage Hand is conjuring it on the inside of a window or a door and unlocking it. Now, this is more useful for like a window or something because you can actually see through it. But if you get lucky with Mage Hand, you would be able to unlock it if there was a key or something on the other side, or if it was like a bolt lock. That kind of stuff is always fun. Now, you have 1 more cantrip. Now, you can pretty much just do whatever you like with this one. I think I'm going to go with Ray of Frost. Ray of Frost is nice because you pretty much slow down enemies. If you hit them with it, it deals a d8 worth of damage, so it deals less damage than Firebolt, but it slows down that creature's movement by 10 feet for that turn. So you're pretty much slowing their advance. Normally, I just rely on Firebolt and you can have your allies tank for you, but if you don't really have many allies or they're a great distance away and they don't have any ranged weapons or anything, you can just plink at them with Ray of Frost and pretty much there's nothing they can do about it because they're not fast enough to actually catch up. Now then, when you're first starting, I believe you start off with 4 first level spells. These spells you pretty much are like, you know, able to use whenever you want, but you can only cast 2 spells per day unless you use Arcane Recovery. So the wizard has a very large variety of spells. Some of the ones that I would recommend, I would certainly get Mage Armor. Now what Mage Armor does is it pretty much raises your armor class by, I believe it raises it to 13, and then you add your dexterity modifier. So that would raise your armor class up to 15, which is actually quite decent. It means that you're not going to be hit all that often. I would also recommend taking Detect Magic, a very useful spell. Now, Detect Magic is a ritual spell, so you can use this as many times as you want per day, although it takes about a minute to cast it, and if you remember in the rulebook, a minute is, like, I believe 10 turns, because a turn is 6 seconds, so you'll not be using this in combat pretty much at all, but it can be a useful spell nonetheless. The next one I would recommend taking is Magic Missile. Now, what does Magic Missile do? You pretty much create 3 darts that you shoot out at opponents. You can redirect these darts at pretty much any way you want, and they always hit the target. So no matter what happens, your magic missiles will always hit, and if there's, say, 3 enemies, you could shoot 1 dart at each of them. If you wanted, you could shoot all 3 of them at 1 target, or just shoot 2 at 1, and the last dart at another person. That is useful. It's pretty much a good utility damage spell. Some of the other spells that I would recommend for pretty much your last spell, I would it more or less just depends on what type of wizard you want to be. If you wanted, you could take Burning Hands. That's a very close range flamethrower spell. It's only really good in close quarters, and remember, you can hit your allies with such spells. I think as my last spell, I will take Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Now, I really like Tasha's Hideous Laughter because it pretty much is effectively Hold Person as a first level spell. So you cast it on an individual, and they can't move, they can't really do anything, they have to fall on the ground laughing. It can also be pretty creepy and kind of funny at sometimes. So yeah, those are the spells that I think would work with this character. Now let's move on. Now we have to determine how many actual spells can you prepare per day. Now, you can only prepare a certain number of spells per day. In the book, it says that you can only prepare them the number of spells equal to your intelligence modifier plus your wizard level. So as a first level wizard, that means I get a 1, and since I get a +3 for my intelligence modifier, I get 4 spells that I can prepare per day. So that means that I can prepare all 4 of these spells currently, and if I level up, that means I get 5, and so on and so on. If you do not have a spell prepared, that means you cannot cast it, and you can only change whatever spells you have prepared after a long rest, which means 8 hours. Alright, now let's move on to your spellcasting abilities. Now, this is your modifiers for your rolls and all that kind of stuff. Now, your spellcasting ability is Intelligence as a wizard, and your spell save DC. This means, say you cast your Tasha's Hideous Laughter on a target. This is going to be the number that they have to roll above to end the spell. Now, that number is an 8, plus your proficiency bonus. As a first level character, that bonus is a 2, plus your intelligence modifier. So that means that this is a 13. So the target would have to roll higher than a 13 to escape your Tasha's Hideous Laughter or any other spell that you might have continuously cast on it, like Hold Person. Next will be your spell attack modifier. This is your attack modifier that you're going to use on your attack spells like Firebolt or Ray of Frost. This is determined by your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. So that means you get a +5 on all your spell attack rolls. This does not mean bonus on your damage rolls. This is only for if you're going to hit them or not. Alright. Finally, let's move on to the skills and background. I think I'm just going to go with a pretty standard background for a wizard. I think I'll just go Sage. This means that I have proficiency in Arcana and History. You don't have to pick Sage, you can literally pick any background that you'd like, so long as you think of a interesting backstory. As a Sage, you also get 2 more language proficiencies, so let's say Elvish and Dwarven. This means that you'll be able to talk to pretty much any of the races. If you want, you could also learn some languages of the monstrous races, because, well, it's helpful to be able to understand what some of the enemies are saying. Let's see here, as a wizard, as a sage, you get some bonus equipment of 10 gold coins, bottle of black ink, you get a quill, which is the feather that you use for writing, a small knife, a letter from a dead colleague with a question you haven't answered. That's a bit of a mouthful, but this is pretty much useful for background. Say you had one of your allies who gave you a question long ago, you haven't been able to answer it, it's been bugging your character all this time, so you've gone on a quest to try and solve this. And you also get common clothes. Now then, let's determine our equipment as a wizard. Well, actually I'll finish up with the skills real quickly. As a wizard, you can be proficient in Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, and Religion. Arcana and History are already taken from the Sage background, so I will go with Investigation and, say, Insight. And like with the saving throws, these are pretty much just mean you get a +2 to these. I'm not going to bother filling these out, because that would be extra time. And move on to the equipment really quickly. Starting equipment that you get as a wizard, a quarterstaff or a dagger. I'm going to take the dagger because I have more dexterity. A component pouch or an arcane focus. I will take an arcane focus. I'll pretty much just have this be, say, a scepter, something like that. Pretty much you want to personalize the focus so it fits your character. Okay. Next you can get a Scholar's Pack or an Explorer's Pack. I think I'll take the Scholar's Pack. And you get a spell book. And that's pretty much it for starting equipment. Because you don't have any base armor, that means that your base armor class will be a 10, plus your dexterity modifier. So base armor class is a 12, mage armor will raise it to a 15. That's much more useful. Your initiative bonus is a +2 because that's your dexterity bonus. And your proficiency bonus is +2 because you are a first level adventurer. If you would like to know what is actually in the Scholars Pack, I'm just going to list that stuff really quickly. My voice is starting to give out because I'm not too used to talking this long. So, let's see here, where is that? Here we are. I'll just list all of this stuff really quickly in the Scholars Pack. Scholars Pack gives you an additional 40 gold, raises it to 50. The Scholars Pack includes a backpack, a book of lore, it doesn't say what it's specified about. It contains a bottle of ink, an ink pen, 10 sheets of parchment, a bag of sand, mostly for drying out your ink and making sure it doesn't like smudge everywhere, and another small knife. That's pretty much everything that was already in the Sage background stuff. But it also provides 40 starting gold. Keep in mind, you're not going to be starting with any provisions, so yeah, no food, you're going to have to buy that initially, as well as a few other things. I hope this helped. This is more of a longer one because the wizard is a lot more complex. Please leave a like or a comment down below. I'm always open to suggestions and always open to feedback. I'm always looking to improve. Thank you and have a nice day.